is Sportsline.
Hey there, Sportsline on your television. Steve Lehman here with you. Glad you are here with us on this Monday night on News Channel 5. Plus, the Titans fall to 0-3 in the preseason with a 16-6 loss to the Steelers on Saturday at Heinz Field up in Pittsburgh. And it was just kind of a frustrating afternoon, right? The third preseason game, always billed as the dress rehearsal for the regular season. This is when you expect to see the starters play the most, and you hope to get your best look at what the team is going to be during the regular season. The starters did play more for Mike Vrabel on Saturday, but they did not play particularly well, especially on the offensive side of the ball. He wanted to see more from the running game. Well, the offensive line was pretty much manhandled in that game. That's not a good sign. Derrick Henry and Dion Lewis, 8 carries, combined for just 23 yards. That's not a particularly good sign. 3 yards a carry is not what you want out of those two backs in the backfield. And then Marcus Mariota, 5 of 8, but the 3 incompletions were dreadful. He had Corey Davis wide open, probably would have been a touchdown if he just threw it to him. And he short hops him on the first possession of the game. The second possession of the game, he's got Davis again in a bit of traffic, but a throw that he needs to make airmails him, incomplete, have to punt again. And then on the third possession on a third down, he's rolling out of the pocket, trying to make a play downfield, throws a ball across his body, and it gets intercepted by Terrell Edmunds. So 3 consecutive possessions where on third down, a bad decision or a poor throw cost the Titans possession of the football. And that's on Marcus Mariota. So when you look at the offense, a lot of things to be disappointed about from what you watched on Saturday. Now, I think the defense played largely well. The one touchdown that the Steelers starters got came on a drive in which they had a couple of penalties that prolonged it, guys jumping off of sides, which can't happen, but you figure that stuff gets corrected. Everything else about it, I think the Titans played pretty well. The one play, Ben Roethlisberger throwing the touchdown to Justin Hunter. By the way, why does it always seem like the former Titans, they find themselves in new places and all of a sudden they have some life to their game? Justin Hunter beats Adoree Jackson on that play. It was a beautiful ball by Big Ben for the touchdown. But other than that, I think the Titans' defense played pretty well on Saturday. What were your impressions of the game? And now what are your impressions of this team? 3 preseason games in, all losses, all by double digits. Does that matter to you at all? Because remember, when the starters were essentially in the first 2 games, even the second team guys were in the first 2 games, the Titans pretty much got the better end of the deal, but not Saturday. So what's your impression of where this team is at 3 preseason games in? Are you concerned? And if you are, how concerned about the overall roster? Or do you have specific concerns like Mariota and what he looked like on Saturday, or how he's looked throughout the entire preseason in your mind in this new offense of Matt LaFleur? The fact that the running game really hasn't gotten going to this point. Not a lot of opportunities, but the fact that it hasn't. Are you concerned about that? And how do you feel about the injuries overall and what that means for this team? There was some great news today, though, at practice. We were out there earlier today, and that's the fact that some of these guys are starting to come back. A laundry list of injuries really affecting this roster right now, and in several key spots, right? You know, Delaney Walker didn't play this weekend. Rashard Matthews hasn't been around. Your all-pro right tackle Jack Conklin hasn't been around. He's on the PUP list. Defensively, injuries everywhere at linebacker. You've lost 3 guys in the secondary for the season. This is a team that has been ravaged by the injury bug so far during the Mike Vrabel tenure. But today you started to see some of these guys trickle back out. Rashard Matthews is off of the PUP list. He was back at practice today. He says he feels like he's on target to be ready to go September the 9th for the regular season opener in Miami. Brian Arakpo back on the field for the first time today since day 2 of training camp. He had a shoulder injury, but he's able to get back out there and help things out as well. Doubtful that you'll see him on Thursday night, but certainly seems on pace to be ready for Week 1, which is all you care about. And then Rashaan Evans, the rookie inside linebacker who was drafted 22nd overall. Titans traded up to get him. He's been out since day 3 of training camp, but he as well hit the field again today. Questions for me, at least, about how quickly a rookie who's missed all that time can get up to speed and be ready for week number 1. But at least from a health standpoint, he seems to be fine. And Evans basically shot me down with the idea that this would be difficult at all to come back from, and said, look, it's pretty much a physical thing about getting on the field. Mentally, I know every place I'm supposed to be. So I just have to get out there and do it now. We'll see. Even his head coach kind of put the brakes on that a little bit today and said, we'll see about him getting ready for game action. He's got to practice first and be out here with us and do that. But great news for the Titans overall, because injuries have played such a part of this preseason. To have all 3 of those guys at least dressed and back on the practice field means they're getting close. And if you can get to the regular season opener with a relatively full complement of guys, you're going to feel much better if you're the Titans. I mean, we went through it last night on the Electric Power Company's Sunday Sports Central. There were like 11 injuries that were unknown, or known, but you didn't really know when the guy was coming back as of last night. So the fact that you get 3 of those guys back today, that's huge. You know, if Matthews can be in the lineup along with Corey Davis in week 1, monumental. Talked to Delanie Walker today. He thinks he's going to be ready, no problems, 100% for week 1 against Miami. That's huge news for the offense as well. You get some of those guys back and they can give you an impact, and maybe it's not as stagnant and as stale of an offense as what we saw Saturday in Pittsburgh. And then on the defensive side of the ball, probably not going to have Derek Morgan in week 1. But if you have Arakpo back, hopefully the injury to Harold Landry's ankle, not too big of a deal. Hopefully you got those 2 guys out there, and that can give you a solid pass rush in week 1. Woodyard, Compton probably up the middle, but if Evans is back, he gives you a great piece there. And then in the secondary, you're pretty good right now, maybe a little thin because of some of the injuries back there, but at least all the starters seem to be in place. The one big question mark, obviously, is Malcolm Butler. Where is he at now? It's been about 10 days since we last saw him on the field, and we don't really have any knowledge. We didn't see him leave the field in pain or agony or anything like that. So what is the deal with him? What's the injury? What's the prognosis? We simply don't know. But clearly, he is a huge piece to what this team wants to do in the secondary. If he's ready to go by week 1, you feel good. If he's not, all of a sudden, what you thought or presumed to be one of the strengths of this defense this year, the quarterbacks in the secondary, maybe not as big of a strength if Malcolm Butler can't go in week 1. So injuries remain a big deal for Mike Vrabel, John Robinson, as they assemble this team and have to get down to the 53-man roster this week. And as we look ahead, you got the Vikings on Thursday night to wrap up the preseason in Nissan Stadium, at 7 o'clock. But then all attention turns to week 1 in Miami, September the 9th. What will the Titans look like that day? Strictly from a roster standpoint and who's available, but also what are they going to look like when the bullets fly for real in a regular season game? Our phone lines are open tonight. We want to hear from you. We've seen kind of a body of work now in the preseason, and it hasn't all been pretty. There's lots of reasons for that. It's a new coaching staff. There's these injuries we're talking about, new systems on both sides of the ball. But what are your impressions? What are your concerns? What's been the positives in your mind? How do you feel about this team 3 weeks into the preseason, 1 week left of the preseason before the regular season opener? 737-7767 is the number. We want to hear from you tonight here on Sportsline. We begin tonight with James. James, you are first up to lead us off here. Hello, James.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead. You're on the air.
Yeah, just a question. I mean, our city of Nashville is behind the Titans. We love them. They're really a great team, but so far it hasn't looked good. What's going to happen in Miami?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, right? They've got to play better than what they did here. But here's the hard part about the preseason at all times, James, is you don't know exactly what coaching staffs are trying to get out of games. Like, we know for a fact that the Green Bay game and the Tampa Bay game, the Titans did absolutely zero game planning. They just went out with vanilla stuff and said, these are the things we've kind of been working on. Go play and see how it does against this team. And so with that being the case, there's no schematics to this. There's no game plan to it. You just kind of want to see how guys perform. They need to perform better. There's mistakes they have to clean up. But it will be a totally different looking team, I predict, September 9th in Miami. Now, whether that's good enough, whether they're healthy enough, I don't know, and I don't have a crystal ball to predict that. But I think the offense is going to be much more creative. I think they're going to be much better in the running game when they try to focus on it for an entire 4 quarters with Henry and Lewis. And I think the defense on this team should be good if it can stay healthy. So I think it's going to be a much different looking team with much more of a purpose when they get down to Miami. But injuries to me are still a big concern. I mean, what type of team's going to be? Of those 11 guys, do they have half of them? Do they have 3/4 of them by the time they kick off? Because that's a pretty good football team. If most of the 11 are still out, that could be a big problem. You got anything else, James?
No, that's it. Just thank you and go Titans.
All right, thanks, James. We appreciate the call. Let's move on now. Go to line 2. Say hello to Joe. Joe, good evening. You're on Sportsline.
Hey, I was just going to say that, the preseason, the way you guys, like the way things happen in the preseason isn't really a reflection of the season. I mean, you can look at Detroit a few years back. They won 4 of their preseason games and then lost 16 in a row. So we don't need to really bother with the preseason.
Sure. The Browns went 4-0 last year and went 0-16. And the Titans, just for the record, went 1-3 last year in the preseason and then went 9-7, got in the playoffs, and won a playoff game for the first time in 14 years. So results in the preseason are often not indicative of what you'll see in the regular season. I think we all understand that.
Right,
I think the concerns here, though, are the injuries and maybe the lack of continuity at times, Joe. That would be my concern. With all the injuries and a new staff, how big of a concern is the fact that they didn't look to be on the same page at times on Saturday?
Well, and that's what you look at it making a recipe. If you're making the souffle and you put it in the oven, you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, you got everything in there, but you don't know what's going to happen. How's it going to come out? And I think that we need to reflect on that and say, you know what? We need to start watching when the season really starts and seeing how the coaches coach. That's the most important thing of a football game is how the coaches are coaching. Everybody goes through injuries. Everybody goes through downfalls. I mean, you got running backs that aren't up to speed sometimes, and then they come back after game 6 or 7. But you have to look at the whole picture of the season instead of just looking at what's going on in the preseason.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, I think even once we get into the season, you have to reserve judgment until you get an entire body of work, right, for what the job this coaching staff did or the season Marcus Mariota had or whoever you're judging. You need to give them the full 16 games of how it plays out and not overreact to a small sample size. So I totally agree with you in that regard.
And I'm going to tell you, I'm an Eagles fan, so we'll see you guys on September 30th. But I'm seeing what's happening with the Eagles right now with their injuries.
Sure.
And how bad they're doing in the preseason. And, it's disappointing, but let's get to the season and things will work its way out. I think the Titans are a playoff team. I think they'll make it. No question about that.
Well, Joe, and how about this? Nick Foles doesn't look like a very good quarterback right now in the preseason. He was certainly just fine during their playoff run last year when he won the Super Bowl, right?
That's correct.
So, I mean, that's the thing. And to your point, you just never know, and I appreciate the call, Joe. You just never know about these things. The Patriots have often struggled in the preseason. The Eagles are struggling right now. I think the only concern, though, is this is a new coaching staff for the Titans. And whether you want to believe that the preseason matters at all or not, and I tend to believe it doesn't, the one thing you probably would hope for here is to get a little something going just to give you some confidence. This is a team that won a playoff game last year, but then the organization fired their coaching staff. And so it's a new staff with new ideas and new keys and new systems and all of that. And if you go out in the preseason and you don't really have any success, how confident of a team do you walk into Miami? I think this is a fairly confident team. I think they believe in themselves, and they've come a long way in the last couple of years within that locker room. So I don't think they're shattered in confidence in any way based off of what has happened here. But do you need some of that? Do young guys need to see some of that reward? Does Marcus Mariota need to see some of that good stuff happen here in the preseason because of how his season went a year ago? I think those are fair questions to ask about what this team's going to look like when they take the field being 1-3 or 0-4 with some struggles in the preseason. Back to the phones we go. Let's say hello to Brian. Brian, good evening.
Here's the deal. Derrick Henry's entire life has built up to this moment. He's wanted this more than anything he's ever wanted in his entire life. And I think that he is the Tennessee Titans. I think if you're going to see a leader step up, it's going to be Derrick Henry. He's a great man. I love him to death. DeMarco Murray loved him to death, too. They're typical smash-bang Titan running backs, and I'll tell you what, I think the Tennessee Titans are Derrick Henry to rule.
Well, that'll be interesting. I mean, he certainly is a guy who's going to get a bulk of the carries, and they're going to rely on him a lot to carry the load for them this season. Although some of the concerns we have about Henry crept up again in that game on Saturday. When pass pressure came, he wasn't there to step up and protect. And that is the issue. If you're Derrick Henry and you want to emerge to be an every down back in this league that they can count on to do everything, you have to do everything, and you have to do it consistently. And they've talked and talked and talked about how he's learning the pass protection schemes, and now in year 3 he's ready to do it. Well, Saturday he was put on the hot seat to do it, and he didn't. And that's the problem. I mean, that's why Murray was always in the game on third downs last year, because they knew they could count on him to pick that stuff up and protect the quarterback. And once again, it was a problem on Saturday, which leads me to believe you're going to see a lot of Dion Lewis in that situation. And that's why they brought him in as well. So I agree with you. I think Henry has to take the next step this year for this team, and I think he's fully capable of doing that as a running
back, not a blocking back. I mean, I don't care who you put in there to block.
But you've got to do both.
Can catch.
Brian.
And plus, in the locker room, he can, get people psyched up, because Mariota is not going to do that. You need a team leader besides Lapco. I mean, he's the only guy in the defense, the linebacker worth of crap. And I keep giving the secondary a lot of grief, and then they performed well. And then the offense didn't perform well.
Sure.
I don't know what to think.
Well, it's all about consistency right now, is these guys have to do it on a day in and day out basis at every position on the field. And that's part of the thing about Henry, is Henry looks good as a running back, although he hasn't exactly exploded in the preseason in this new offense. But he's a perfectly capable running back. But to be that guy on every down in this league, you've got to be able to do the other things. And right now, he just hasn't proven that he's willing to do those little things when he doesn't have the ball in his hands on a down-in, down-out consistent basis. And that's going to give you some pause on a 3rd and 7 in the regular season. Do you want him in the game, or do you have to have Dion Lewis in the game? We'll see. We'll see how they approach that. Phone lines are open, 737-7767, the number. We go to Anthony. Anthony, thanks for the call. You're next up here on Sportsline. Hello, Anthony. All right. Not sure what was going on there. I put him on hold. We'll see if maybe we get him back. We'll take a break here. We'll come back. More of your phone calls. Lines are open besides that. 737-7767 is the number. We'll also get to Travis Haney from The Athletic. Joined us last night on the Electric Power Company's Sunday Sports Central. Help us to break down this Titans roster over the next little bit. And Derek Mason, Vanderbilt head coach, he was in studio last night as well. Get you set for week 1 of college football. We'll do that all straight ahead here on Sportsline on News Channel 5+.